Welcome back. I'm Connie Sobel, your host of Called to Create, and we are so delighted to have not only a marvelous person, but to have someone who is actually a throwback to the scriptures. That's right. We get the spiritual and the joyful all in one today. We have Jackson VanDerwerken today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
We're so thrilled to have him. If you don't know, if you have not been watching rabidly the Book of Mormon videos, he is the one that has played Nephi, and so fantastically. We're going to go in depth on how it is filming this, preparing to be Nephi, and also this whole navigating of being a gospel grounded person in this industry of acting. That can be a bit of a dice. So I want to let you know who he is. He started acting in fourth grade, big debut. On stage, played Willy Wonka. I don't know, that must have been big shoes to fill, because who can compare to Gene Wilder? But apparently Jackson did such a great job. He continued on to the Mad Hatter, Iago in Aladdin, Lord Farquaad in Shrek, Little Boy in Ragtime, Bobby in Curtains, Conrad Birdie in Bye Bye Birdie, and Don Lockwood in Singing in the Rain, one of my favorites. And then for his role in Jean-Michel in Cinderella this year, he won Best Supporting Actor at Proctor's High School Musical Theater Awards. In the independent film The Cul-de-sac Kids, produced locally, he was Scotty the Crescent. And Jackson recently completed filming for the live action videos of the Book of Mormon, in which he plays the young prophet Nephi. He grew up in New York, I think a little bit in Virginia though, right?
Yeah.
New York, yeah. Has an older sister and two brothers who no doubt want to be like him. And also, just for fun, worked in his family's pumpkin patch farm and as a lifeguard, and is an Eagle Scout back in the day when we still did that. He also served in Brazil for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as a missionary. And in October 2020, he was sealed to Drew Swayze in the Provo City Center Temple. And we're going to share some fun things about his sweet wife as well. So let's just dive into it. You are a kid, fourth grade. What is it that drew you to do the stage? You know, not necessarily sports right off the bat, maybe a little bit of that, but what drew you to the stage?
Well, the first ever musical that I did was actually in my high school. We did Ragtime, and I was auditioning as part of Little Boy. But you have to understand, my town is a town of like 2,000 people. So there's like no one there. In Portuguese, there's a saying that goes without shame. So I just like go without shame. And I just, auditioned for the part of Little Boy, and I landed it. And I realized how fun it was. And I decided to do some clubhouse theater. And just to clarify to the audience, I wasn't filling anybody's shoes. It was Willy Wonka Jr., so everyone was about my age that was doing the musical. And so I wasn't, talking to Charlie the Chocolate Factory, who's the same age as me in fourth grade.
A stellar start, let's just say, But it sounds like, some kids get on stage and they're like, nah. And it sounds like you found a home. Like you said, I love this. What was it about it that kept you going in it from elementary to high school and beyond?
I've always fed off the reactions of people really well. I think there's a term in psychology for it. I can't remember what it is, but I love to perform because I love getting the audience to feel something. I loved playing sports, so I was actually on a lot of sports teams back in high school as well, specifically basketball. And so like getting out on the court and getting people excited about basketball was the same exhilaration as it was being on stage and making people laugh. That's kind of like the big deal of why I really was attracted to theaters, because I could make people feel something. And I realized that I could do it, better than most, because acting to me wasn't just reciting lines. It was trying to pull that emotion out of somebody.
And it is a skill set. It is to take words on a paper and then connect with an audience. And I love how you brought that up, because it isn't just accolades and applause and things like that. It is that connection, that synergy. And even in the scriptures, when it says, that both will be edified, it really is that in acting and good theater. And so I really do feel it's a vehicle of creation, that you create this experience together. And I love that you engage in that with an audience, that you're like, I'm here for you. And what do we need to do to make this a memory making experience for you? So I love that you got that early, that you could feel that. When you kind of shift and say, I want to do this seriously, what were some of the feelings that drew you to that? And was it you just fell into it, or did you feel like, I'm going to do this? And if so, what kind of concerns about navigating this did you kind of have to consider?
So the big shift for me came, I was a sophomore in high school, and throughout all of junior high, I had done some child acting. So like throughout this whole like surge of theater actor, I wanted to go and like audition for Broadway in New York City because I wasn't too far. It was only 3 hours by train. So I went and auditioned for some Broadway musicals, but the competition was way more than 2,000 people in a small town in upstate New York. So I did get a call back for Matilda once, but then I grew out of the height range in a week. And so I was like hitting my growth spurt. So I was a little too tall for Matilda to go back and do that. But after like 7th grade, I decided to hone in on more on sports. And so from 7th grade to about 10th grade, I just focused solely almost on basketball and, you know, trying to develop my skill set there. But it came my sophomore year where I realized this isn't going to take me anywhere. I mean, yeah, it's good exercise, but like, why am I spending so much time doing this? And, you know, put me in the pool of the other 6-foot white kids out there that want to go play basketball at BYU. Like, how many are there? I kind of came to this moment of just like, what am I doing? And who do I want to be? What do I want to be like? I went to the scriptures, but I also went to my parents, just kind of like, what do I do? And my dad was like, oh, you're very business oriented. You'll be a good businessman. I'm like, okay, great. Well, I'm 16. So I could start a business, but I live in Schoharie, New York. So any business I start, you know, isn't going to go very far. So I went to my mom and I was talking with her, you know, what can I do to like put time and effort into something that truly matters? And she's like, oh, you can get back into acting if you want. I'm like, yeah, let's, you know, update my resume and stuff and take an acting class. And that's all I really did for acting. And it wasn't until I started self-reflecting of like, who do I want to be like? Like, who's my idol? And of course there was Christ, but, you know, as a 17-year-old kid, I didn't really have quite the conception of Christ that I do now. And so I focused more on the characters of the Book of Mormon, like Captain Moroni. And I believe that's why they're there, you know, so that young men like me can develop their relationship with Christ almost through them. And so I set up, you know, some action figures on my desk. I even have a picture of it. I had like Nephi, Captain Moroni, and Moroni bearing the plates in front of like a picture of Jesus. And that was my little setup. And I was like, okay, what can I do to become like these men? And it was like after I had gone through that whole thing of just kind of being all distraught about basketball, trying to like figure out where I wanted to take my life, it was like a week or two later that my mom was like, oh, they're doing auditions for the Book of Mormon videos. It's an open cast call. So that was kind of that journey where I started to take it more seriously after that cast call.
That is amazing. And I love that you share that it started with that desire, that core desire of really, truly my purpose, my identity, who do I want to be and become? And it's beautiful that you automatically went to that and found that bridge between, you know, the Savior and then, okay, my everyday, how can I keep working towards that? That's fantastic. So let's tell them about the story. Okay, so I was invited to the set of Book of Mormon. They invited influencers to come one day and go and check out the set and meet some of the cast members. And they had general authorities there. It was incredible. We were like pinching ourselves. The spirit was so strong there. We'll talk about that later in just a second, but it was amazing. And I was lucky enough to sit down next to Jackson, and we ended up chatting and hearing these stories about how all these things came about, and so appreciating your self-deprecating manner. But I loved, and I think it's so important for people listening to hear how this all played out for you, because this really was kind of one thing led to another, and the Lord really had prepared the path. So can you share with us, you were thinking about it, doing that open casting call, but then you went to your dad and he was not that encouraging, I think.
So it was kind of a back and forth. Actually, my mom first presented it to me. She said, you should audition for Nephi. I was like, look at me. I am not Nephi. I was skinny. And if you look at the cast call, I didn't meet any of the requirements. They said, you need to be over 6 feet. I was 5'11" and 3/4. You need to be muscular. And I was skinny as a string bean. And they said, you need to be over 18 years old. And I was 16. On top of that, I had no screen acting experience. I'd just done like community theater, and that was it. So I said, oh, yeah, okay, Mom. And I didn't do anything about it. Then my seminary teacher, who, just give you an idea how small my town is, happens to be my aunt as well. So she comes up to me and is like, hey, they emailed all the seminary teachers and said they're looking for people to play Nephi. And I really think that you should do it because, you know, you make me think of Nephi. I was like, yeah, okay. And I didn't do anything about it just because I never could see myself in that role. And after, a week or so, my mom came back to me and said, hey, just audition for this. It's not going to take that much of your time. Here's the sides, just a few scriptures from First Nephi. All you got to do is just memorize them and recite them to the camera. And I procrastinated this more than I ever procrastinated everything. I'm not a procrastinator, just so you guys know. Like when I get an assignment, I do it right away so it can be off my plate. So when I got this assignment, I procrastinated it. It was so, it's kind of ironic and that I just don't do that. I'm not a procrastinator, but I totally put this off. And when I was about to do it, my mom was out of town. She left to go on a work trip. And my dad was home, and I was going to set the camera up because I felt embarrassed to ask my dad to videotape me. And he walked in the room. He's like, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm putting in this audition video for Nephi. And he's like, oh, yeah. Well, just be real that I don't necessarily want to pay for you to go out and get paid $2 an hour as an extra because, it's all the way in Utah. And it's far away. And I was like, yeah, you're right, Dad, because, I'm not going to get Nephi and I'm not going to get even Jacob probably. So I didn't do it. And then my mom gets back the next day and she's like, and just to clarify, the audition tape was due that day. So the next day is a day late for the audition tape, like past the deadline. My mom comes back. I was avoiding the conversation. She's like, so did you audition? I said, no, I just, didn't think it was worth getting paid $2 an hour to go out and be an extra. She's like, that's what your dad told you, didn't he? I was like, yeah. And so she's like, you know what? Let's just do it right now. Let's set up the camera. Do it really quick. I'm like, Mom, it was due yesterday. Like, why are we even doing this? Like, not. She's like, well, come on, let's set it up. So she sets up the tripod. I barely get the scripture memorized, and I recite it to the camera. And as soon as I get it right, because I kept messing it up, as soon as I get it right, I was like, okay, we're gone. And we send the audition tape in. Fast forward a month, my mom is like, oh, you got a call back for Nephi. And I was thinking maybe like 50 people got a call back for Nephi because, church worldwide is auditioning. It was an open cast call. I'm like, who didn't see this? They're emailing seminary teachers. I get a call from the casting director, and she said I was one of 3 out of 1,000 people that auditioned for Nephi to get a call back. My jaw dropped. And she proceeded to tell me that my acting needed some work and we needed to buff you up a little bit, but we like that you're young and we like your look, is what they said. And it was so surprising to me because I didn't meet any of their requirements. I'm also in this little town in upstate New York where nothing ever happens. And I had the decision to make at that time. They said, okay, well, we want to fly you out for a screen test for the tryouts. And how this is going to work is we're going to fly you out, this week in February, which was the week of my basketball finals, basically like my last season of basketball for my sophomore year. And I was like, okay, I got this decision to make. Do I choose basketball or do I choose this? And it was kind of a tough decision. And I just said, do I leave my season of basketball for the chance that I could play Nephi in the Book of Mormon videos? And I was like, well, it's kind of a no-brainer, so I'll just go to Utah. And so that's what I decided to do.
That's incredible. And I'm sure listeners are feeling the same way that I am. So many gospel principles that just are loud and clear as you are going through this in obscurity in upstate New York, right? And you're thinking, who am I, right? Like Enoch or whatever. All of these people in the scriptures, these are real people and they went through these same feelings. And Moses, and who am I to do whatever? And there's no way, and I don't fit the requirements, and I stutter, and I whatever. And that you were able to have those influences around you that said, you can do this, and those loving nudges. I love this process. I love it even more than the fact that you were able to do it. I love the story behind it because so many people out there feel like I don't fit the mold. Somebody else is already doing it and doing it better. What do I have to offer? And the Lord wants everyone, all hands on deck, all fingerprints, all of those things matter. I love that you came out and on that faith, you were able to move forward. So let's fast forward. You get the role. Tell us, how did you prepare for Nephi? I mean, I'm sorry, that's overwhelming. Like everyone's going to have their idea. He even says in there, I'm large of stature. And I'm just saying, how did you prepare for this physically, emotionally, spiritually?
it's just like you said, this whole preparation process to Nephi was more faith building than any of the actual performance for me, because I did not realize how much we are like the people in the scriptures. And that was my issue before, is I didn't see myself as Nephi because I couldn't relate the scriptures to myself. And I just said I wanted to be like these really great men. And I never could see myself being like them because I put them on this huge pedestal and idolized them in this way that was inhuman almost. But that's where we got to put Christ. When I started studying for Nephi, there's all these funny things where, you start realizing, okay, maybe I did get this role for a reason. So I'm going to start thinking in a way to where, like, all right, I'm going to put myself in the scriptures and I'm Nephi. How am I thinking? And I totally think Nephi was bragging his pants off when he was saying he's large in stature. Like, there's no way he's doing anything other than just wanting everybody to know that he's super strong. Like, what else are you putting that in there? So, there was that. But also, I really kind of latched on to, strangely enough, to people's performances, like Tom Hardy's performance of Bane, how he totally redefined that character. Bane in the comics is like this guy who's like a wrestler, sumo mask, souped up on this weird steroid stuff. And but in the movie, he's like totally different. Still has a mask, but it's different. Still is big, but it's not steroid shredded big. So I thought it was really interesting how he transferred that character in the movies, and he did an amazing job at the role. And so I started trying to do the tactics of acting in the way that, people like Tom Hardy did. But at the same time, I was really trying to get big. So they put me with a trainer, and they had me eating 7 meals a day, chicken, rice, and, some vegetables, usually broccoli, bland, boiled chicken. So it was, I'd eat that basically 4 times a day, and the rest of it was protein shakes. I was consuming 380 grams of protein per day.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
to give those people an idea out there who don't know what that is, a chicken breast has 20 grams.
Yeah.
And I was being told, because my metabolism's going so fast, that I needed to stop doing so much, because I was playing basketball, I was doing a musical, and I was working out every day. And so I was burning a lot of calories, and I'm eating 7 meals a day. And my trainer would be like, so can you squeeze in 2 burgers today? And I just would like vomit in my mouth. I'm like, do you know how much I'm eating?
This makes me laugh. I have to interject. I'm thinking of Nephi subsisting on raw meat. Okay, so this is a modern day thing. Oh, I got to eat those burgers, those protein shakes.
I know, right?
But still, though, when you're force fed like that, and you have to do this, and it's got to be in a certain time frame, that's pressure.
Yeah, I was eating every 2 hours easily. And I was eating as much as I could eat every 2 hours. So I was consuming enormous amounts of food just so I could put on the weight so that I could look the part. And what my trainer told me at the beginning of it, he said, listen, this is 20% working out and 80% eating. If you mess up on eating, you'll mess up the whole regimen, basically. And so in this preparation, I got so honed in on the physical preparation that I almost forgot the spiritual preparation of it. And I kind of shook myself awake one day, and I was like, you know what? I need to prepare spiritually. And I wasn't seeing results by this point. I'm eating this much food, and it's like my bicep feels like it's the same size. I'm just pumping myself full of these calories, and I'm seeing no results. And by this point, we're 2 weeks in, and we start filming in a month. I start getting kind of hectic, and I calmed myself, and I started studying the scriptures and studying, preparing spiritually for the role, trying to figure out how I could change myself to be like Nephi on the set, and studying his life. And when I did that, I started seeing results, and I ended up putting on 15 pounds of muscle in the month and a half that I had. So,
people are going to run out and be like, okay, no, wait, what did he do? Read the scriptures, people. Feast upon the word. Wow. That is incredible. Did you feel like when that happened, did you feel like that synergy of the physical and spiritual, and like the click of, okay, I'm getting ready, this is going to happen?
Yeah. Once I made that decision, it was not even a week later, I started like looking in the mirror, and I was like, whoa, that wasn't there yesterday. it was daily changes in my body, like that. And you could think of it in a scientific way and say, oh, the diet kicked in. But I tell you that I did not gain a single pound after that month and a half. I stayed at that same weight. And everyone knows that does dieting, that you have to increase the amount of food you're eating if you want to increase the amount of weight. And I did that, and I could not put on more weight. It was incredible changes that I saw that were inhuman almost.
I love the point that you make, that it was that switch point that made all the difference. And when we were on set, I heard people making jokes like 12 weeks to Nephi, that's my regimen, that kind of thing. And they're saying, I ate schools of tilapia, and forests of broccoli and things like that. And you got the results that you needed in the time frame that you needed it. And again, this principle of it is the process that yields the results. And I know when you were talking about doing this role and all the things that came with it, here you're on this set and you are now trying to convey the scriptures, and you have that scriptural responsibility to be true to that. Were there any experiences or moments that helped you when you were on set, or even being on set, that helped you be able to be in character? Did you have any moments where you're like, wow, this impacted me being here and being a part of what's going on? Because when we went on there, we're just Gentiles. And I'm telling you, we were on there and we could feel the spirit on the set. There was such a thing, like everyone we met and just the feel. Yes, there's a professional and the business part that's going on, and absolutely. But there really was a feel. And at one point, the person who played the prophet Moroni and you were standing side by side, and we took a picture. We'll put that in the show notes, but it was sort of like bookending, the Book of Mormon there. And he was sharing his experience and bearing his testimony essentially. And it was just standing there in that hut, in that environment, in that feel, was so powerful. Were there any moments for you like that when you were filming?
Absolutely. We had the opportunity to attend a devotional where Elder Christofferson spoke and gave the cast and crew actually an apostolic blessing. And then I actually received a blessing from Elder Perkins, one of the general authorities at the time, who blessed us that we would be able to feel and experience the way those people felt. And I can absolutely attest to that. One of the most powerful experiences I had was probably one of the most powerful days for everyone who did season 1 and 2. And that was the bursting of the bands, which is kind of, a random episode for that to be one of the most powerful days on set. But it was that episode that I think one of the general authorities watched, one of the apostles, and they said, I read this story since I was a kid, and I have never experienced it like that. I never thought of it like that. And I never thought of it either. So to kind of walk you through what I was thinking, I was preparing mentally for this day, because I was like, okay, Nephi burst the bands. And I was thinking I was going to break some bands open and be all like Superman, powerful, Shazam it up. And that's not at all what happened. That was like what I was planning. I was planning on being like all awesome in the moment. And then they were like, oh, well, no, the band's loosed. And I was like, oh, that's so lame. Like, the band's just got loosed. Like, I want to break some bands off my wrist. But once we got the set and we started the basically the beating up scene, we filmed that shot like 20 times from different angles. And I just, wasn't really getting beat up, but the way that we were performing it, Layman Lemuel and I, people on set kept coming up to me and asking if I was okay. Like, are you hurt? Like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, they're not actually hitting me. They're like, it looks like he's kicking you. It's like, he's not kicking me. I promise he's not kicking me.
Wow.
And after that whole sequence of fight scene, everyone coming up to me, they went to go paint the rope burns in my hands and my body. I was drinking a water bottle and my limbs just went so limp. Like I couldn't lift the water bottle to my lips. And I was like, what is going on? And I started getting so achy and sore to the point where I asked the makeup artist, who's actually my mother-in-law now, for some like biofreeze. And she's like, yeah, we'll get some after. This is like the last scene of the day. We were finishing up with the scene. Like, we'll get some after. I'm like, cool. Like my joints were hurting so bad and I couldn't lift my arms. And they tied me up. They threw me in the dirt. And we did the prayer scene. And I have a hard time getting emotional. Funny, for an actor to have that trouble, but I really do. It's not easy for me to get emotional. And I was able to for that scene, and it was not what I was playing at all. And it was like I was feeling a lot of pain that wasn't there, both physically and emotionally. And afterward, I heard from several others that the spirit was so strong. Some people had some spiritual experiences beyond that. And I got up after that scene and everyone was crying. I was like, what? What just happened? They drove me back to the trailer to the base camp. And I was sitting in the chair getting the makeup taken off. And the makeup artist got the biofreeze out and was like, what's that for? She's like, aren't your joints hurting? I was like, oh no, I don't feel that anymore. So that was probably one of the most powerful days on set, was, actually feeling those things and not knowing why I was feeling them.
Wow. And talk about reading the scriptures and going back and remembering that, having that knowledge, that soul knowledge. That is incredible. It just makes me think of, I was reading about Judy Bremer, who translated the Book of Mormon into Xhosa. It's a South African language. And she said, as she was translating, she would pray to know which word that prophet would use. And she said she was stunned that she would feel that a certain prophet would use a certain word. Some were more strict, some were more on the mercy side or whatever, but that they all had this different personality and the different feel about them. And that when you put yourself in that position to sort of be a bridge to that, that you are opening yourself up to those experiences if you are prepared. That is incredible, Jackson. Just amazing experiences that you have had in this so far. It was an incredible day. We were only on the set one day. What are your thoughts from here? Like, what, now that you've had this experience and you're probably feeling that same thing of like, what does the Lord want to do with me from here? Have you had any thoughts that this is springboarding you to, or switch pointing you to from here?
Yeah, I've actually thought quite a bit about it. I always try to think of the reason why the Lord gave me the opportunity to play Nephi. And sometimes I catch myself thinking that it's because he wants me to go into acting and be in acting and kind of help change the industry that way. But, there are a lot of actors who are LDS as well that, will get into acting in Hollywood and they will kind of go off on strange roads, for a lack of a better term. And it's very easy to slip up once you start going down the Hollywood route, just because to earn a buck, you have to do immoral things. And I have not quite wanted to put myself in that position in pursuing acting. And it hasn't quite felt right either in terms of going the acting route. But I've tried to decipher the reason as to why God gave me the role over someone else, because truly anyone could have played this role. I always think it's funny when, these teenage girls fangirl over me, and I'm just like, it could be my brother-in-law and they'd be doing the same thing. It would be the same situation. So it's not me that they're fangirling, it's the idea that I played Nephi, but I try to figure out why the Lord gave it to me. And quite honestly, I've been so blessed by this project. I can go on about the blessings. I met my wife on set. That's probably the biggest reason I got the role. But at the same time, I was able to relate with prophets on a human level that I've never been able to relate on, that I couldn't have seen myself doing, basically likening the scriptures unto myself. I wasn't able to do before this. Understanding that the Lord chooses the youth. From the beginning of days, Nephi was 15. The stripling warriors were 12 to 19. Captain Moroni was 25. Morton was 16. Joseph Smith was 14. You could go on and on about the youth that have been chosen. And they're continuing to be chosen. And so these are the lessons that I've learned and the blessings that I've received. Right now I have an internship at the church helping with the Book of Mormon videos that I would not have had if I hadn't gotten the role. So like my life is continually being blessed by this opportunity that I've had. It's totally catapulted me. And I always tell people my short answer when they ask me how I got the role, I felt luck. Like there's no way I could have gotten this role if it hadn't been for God. And so I'm still trying to figure out that reason. And just to give you a sneak peek into my current life, right now I'm in a program called Sandbox at BYU, where we have to design, code, and create an app in 2 semesters, and then we present it to investors. And I'm coming up with this idea right now, trying to figure out what I should do. And it's based on the film industry. It's trying to get people, into the film industry that have been shut out because Hollywood is very isolated. So this app would kind of open up that market to everyday users. And so like, maybe that's the reason, but I'm continually trying to find that, I guess, higher calling in the role, even though, having received the role itself is a huge calling. I don't really want to peak in high school. So
I love how you bring that up, that this discovery process, and you kind of think, oh, that's why. And then something else opens. I love your ability to look at your life with that discovery and that humility, and to be able to say, God, here am I, send me. I may not be everything that you need me to be right now, but I'm willing, and I'll go and I'll figure it out as I go. And maybe I stumble, but I know the Lord can work with that, right? And obviously he has. So we have to touch on this sweet, tender story about you meeting your wife. So can you tell us how that transpired? Because when you were telling me that story, I was laughing so hard. But tell us how that all happened.
Okay, I can't go into too much detail because there's a little bit of drama. So I met the makeup artist, is now my mother-in-law. Her name is Becky, and her daughter's name is Drew. So I was in Becky's chair getting my makeup done at the screen test, and she was like, "Oh, I have a son your age that you would really like to hang out with, because I know you don't have too many people to hang out with here." And I was like, well, my whole mom's side of my family is here, but okay. So I went out to her house one day and I went to just go hang out with her son. I don't think I met Drew at that point because I met her at the MPS studios, and she brought her in to introduce her to me. She said, "And this is my daughter, Drew." And I was like, "Hi, Drew." And I thought she was cute. She later told me that she was so starstruck. I'm just kidding. I just said hi, and she just said hi. And, we went on our separate ways. And then I saw her on set one day and I was like, "I think that's Becky's daughter's Drew." She was like helping out. I come to find out that she was volunteering on set, 12-hour days, like not getting paid. And I was like, wow, that is really admirable. Like, you don't find too many people in film that will just drop out. And she's basically been in film her whole life, helping out her mom and her grandma. And I thought that was really admirable. So I struck up a conversation with her, and it was like one of the most intellectual conversations I've ever had with somebody. And I really thought she was fun and smart, and like all of like those things that you'd want to find in a wife. And so I went back in my trailer and I was like, I'd want to have a wife like Drew. But I wasn't thinking like, I want Drew to be my wife. I was just like, I want to have a wife like Drew. She's cool. She's funny. She's, fun to be around. She's humble. And so fast forward, we got together, went on a few dates, and then basically had this weird miscommunication. So that's where the drama comes in. But long story short, we ended up getting back together by the end of the summer. And it was really serendipitous. Our whole relationship and coming to know each other was really serendipitous. I've never met someone more deep and truly loving as Drew. Like, she is truly one of the most selfless people you will ever meet. And so I really think that, if there isn't any other reason, that it was to find her. So.
And we were so blessed that day when we were going through, and he was kind of hanging with our group, and he's like, "Oh, we'll probably see her today." And then here she comes walking through. We'll put the notes too, because I took a picture of the two of them. It was just so darling. Yeah. And I have to add, I was like, "So how did you like get to know each other?" He's like, "Well, she was makeup. So like she's, putting on makeup and stuff on my chest every day." And I'm like, "Well, there you go. Okay.
There you go."
But the thing that I love that you just shared is that you saw her for her, and seeing who she is, again, not trying to be all scriptural, but Ruth-like, where she's just there for the right reasons, and she's being amazing her, and how the Lord has prepared both of you and who you are, and working with that to connect in that place. What a gorgeous place to meet, just having that experience and knowing that that's where it all catalysted from. Just absolutely beautiful. Jackson, I wish we had more time to talk, because this has just been so fun and fabulous and so spiritually enlivening, where I'm looking at this whole process for you that we've mentioned, and all the way along these spiritual breadcrumbs. And I'm hoping that listeners will be able to turn back and look in their own lives and see the spiritual breadcrumbs that God is giving them and leading them along, where it looks like they don't fit the bill, or it looks like things aren't going to maybe pan out, or they don't know where the next step is. But the path has been prepared and the Lord has a plan for them. And he wants to help them use their talents and abilities and gifts. And maybe it's in unexpected ways. I so hope this app goes fantastically. I can't imagine that with your experience and your love of the scriptures and the youth and film and all of those things, that there isn't a beautiful recipe that's already waiting for you to be able to use all the things you have to the best of your abilities for him. Love this today. If people want to get a hold of you, where's the best way for them to find you?
Probably my Instagram is what I check the most. It's at Jackson_VanDerwerken on Instagram. And I check my DMs, so that's also fine if they want to DM me.
We'll put that in the show notes as well. And my personal encouragement, go back and watch those Book of Mormon videos. They're in season 5 this fall. Is that correct?
They're finishing up season 5. Season 4 will be launched this fall, which is Christ in the Americas.
We were there when they were finishing that season 5. Incredible. Just amazing things. Jackson, thank you so much for being with us today. This was pure joy.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
And for those of you listening, if you like these interviews, then we invite you to go below, rate, review, and subscribe, and check out some of the other people we've interviewed. Amazing stories and experiences that help you on your creative journey. All the great people who have gone before you and have built the bridges and are sharing their tips and tools on how you can be called to create.